Welcome to the Influential Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Duncan, and my dream is to inspire moms to pursue their goals and help them make a difference in their world. I'm a mom of 2 young boys, a wife to my high school sweetheart, and a lawyer. This show is a place to hear stories of moms working hard to have a positive influence in their profession or their community, and sometimes both, even as they juggle their responsibilities at work, at home, and to their children. You'll get tangible, practical tips for managing the chaotic world of motherhood and work. Come along as we hear these stories and feel inspired to step outside of our comfort zone as leaders and as a positive force within our communities. I believe that moms can change the world. Okay, so I am here today with Tancy Campbell, and I found her on Instagram. She is her well-spent life on Instagram and has a really cool story about taking her family from, I think, $100,000 of debt to zero. So as a stay-at-home mom and wife, we're going to hear her story about how she managed to guide her family through the budgeting and the hard work to get there, and what other moms can do to help make changes to their family's debt and move towards a debt-free life. So Tancy, thank you for being on the podcast.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So take us back, and first just tell us a little bit more about yourself, because I've just just barely touched an introduction. So tell us a little bit more about you. Before we hit record, we had a little bit of a conversation. I'm in North Carolina. You're from North Carolina. So tell us a little bit about you and your family, and then we'll start talking about your debt-free journey.
All right. Well, I am 34, and like you said, I am originally from North Carolina, and I am a mil spouse, which means I am married to someone in the military, and my guy is in the U.S. Navy.
And thank you both for the service that your family gives.
Thank you. And I really didn't foresee this lifestyle. I always wanted to go into the military, and I even signed up, and I was ready to go to boot camp and everything. And my husband now, he went in and he proposed, which caught me off guard. And we were very young. I was 18 and he was 20. And I was just a teen in love. And so I told my recruiter, this isn't going to happen because I'm going off with this young man and there can't be both of us in the military. And so that's where our relationship started. And we've been married. It'll be 16 years this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we've lived a couple of places. Our first spot was Jacksonville. And then we moved to Memphis, Tennessee. And at that time, I was getting my master's degree in public health. Okay. And I got pregnant right around the end of that second year of graduate school. And I've never thought to myself that I would be a stay-at-home mom. I kind of just fell into that because once she got here, I was like, I can't go back to work. Like, I just, I couldn't see myself dropping her off every morning and picking her up at 3. And so my husband and I were both kind of like surprised by that because I didn't think I would be that person. And he was just like, oh, so we're one income now. So we quickly had to make a change in how we dealt with money. And it's funny, we moved and I came across a card that I received for graduation, and it was from a friend, and she had given me $20. And at this point, we were kind of living paycheck to paycheck. And I said, I'm going to use this $20 and I'm going to buy the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. And so I bought his little set. And I read it and I was just mind blown, like completely mind blown. And I was like, we got to clean up our finances. And I was like, one of the first things we need to do is we need to start paying our tithes. And that's just a personal thing for us, dealing with our faith. And so even after that, once you're out of school for 6 months, if many of you can relate, once you graduate, those student loans kicked in.
Yeah.
And so
that grace period is over.
It's completely over.
Yes.
And so it was like all at the same time, I decided I wasn't going back to work. I wanted to pay tithes, and the student loans kicked in, and it was really kicking our butts.
Yeah.
And so we stayed at the home we were at for that complete year. We were renting at the time, and I said, we have to move. And that's something that we usually wouldn't just up and do just because it's strenuous, but we jumped all in, and we moved. We cut our expenses by a lot, and we started our debt-free journey then.
Wow, that is amazing. Okay, so I just want to be sure I understand a timeline. So you moved to Memphis, and how long had you been married when you moved to Memphis?
When we moved to Memphis, I would say 7 years.
7 years. Okay. So how much debt did you have when you moved to Memphis?
Oh my gosh. I had I had student loans. Oh, my student loans. They were probably around 42. Fortunately, I went to a community college and I did like a work study program there and paid completely all of that. And then I transferred into a university, and I did 2 years of nursing school and realized that nursing wasn't for me.
Right.
And so I had to switch majors and do an extra 2 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so it was like I was there 4 years anyway.
Yeah.
And so then there was that, and I went to grad school. So together it was probably about $40,000. And then we had a car.
Debt. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those cars. Ugh,
yeah,
I know. And so you moved to Memphis. You had a baby at this point, or?
Yeah, well, I'm pregnant, and
so you're
we're
pregnant
there for a few years, and we had the baby at the end of our tour in Memphis. So,
okay,
yeah.
So when you said, "Look, here's $20." Things are feeling out of control debt-wise. I'm going to pick up this Dave Ramsey book with this $20 I found. How much did you have in debt then? It sounds like it had probably increased.
It wasn't, I think the problem was that we were just going about our lives making payments.
Yeah.
And we had 2 incomes. And so we could live that life of I'll just make the payments. And it's almost as if me not having a job was a blessing, because it got me to see that debt is not normal.
Yeah.
And so if I still had a job, I would be like, oh, we can afford to, make payments on our student loans and pay our tithes and all that. And we would have went on with life as is. And so I don't think the debt really increased. It's that our income decreased, and it made us realize like we have to fix something.
Yeah. So when you say, just to be sure people understand, when you say you were making the payments, you mean you were making like the minimum payments?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Did you have any type of debt other than the student loans and the vehicle, the car debt? Like, did you have credit cards and stuff too?
No, we're pretty good with our credit cards.
That's good.
If we put something on there, it gets paid right away. But, you know, it's kind of like student loans and car loans. It's kind of like a normal debt kind of thing.
Right. And it's well, as a former bankruptcy attorney, it's more difficult to deal with both of those in various ways, because student loan debt, it's more or less impossible to, to do anything other than make the minimum payments on it unless you're going to work towards paying it off, because you can't wipe it out in bankruptcy. It's really, you can get your deferments, but then here comes the interest that's just adding on top of it. Yep. And then on a car, if you don't pay it, they're going to come get it, So it's like you're kind of backed into a corner with that. So you started the Total Money Makeover. You moved to try to reduce expenses, and I guess it sounds like maybe you hadn't really been sticking to a strict budget before that point, but what was that like for your marriage and, as a new mom to now be sticking to a budget in your daily life?
Ooh, this is the fun stuff.
Okay.
Well, my husband, He was excited about the fact that I was on board to do something positive with our money, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he was upset that it took the book to get me on board versus like him saying, hey, we should keep money here or we should keep money there. Like he's always been kind of a saver, and I'm a spender, not to the point where I overspend, but I was just like, if we got it, hey. And so he's just like, how is it that you read a book and all of a sudden you get, you
It
get
clicked.
this? And so, and I was on it, and I was on it so hard. I was following every rule and every step. And for him, he didn't understand all of the rules and all of the steps because, I didn't make him read it or anything. I would just, present the idea and I would want him to follow along. And that was a big mistake I made in the beginning by trying to impose rules on him without him reading along or us sharing that experience of learning how to deal with debt in our finances. So.
Yeah. So he didn't have the same kind of like buy-in into what the
not
process was.
For a very long time.
Yeah. So how did you get him on board and get him to kind of buy into what you were asking him to do?
I'll be honest, it took some time. And I know I run across couples all the time who they're like, my significant other doesn't want to jump on board. And I just kind of think about being an example and just kind of involving him in as much as he's willing to be involved in and hope something clicks along the way. It did take a while, mainly because a lot of the time that I was paying off debt, he was deployed. And so,
okay.
While it made it easier financially because, that's one less mouth, that's one less car to gas, so all of that extra money was nice to have. But when he came back, he's free, and so he's ready to party.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's kind of hard to be like, we're in the middle of paying off debt. I want you to like not do everything. And he's like, I've been on a ship for 6 months. I'm going to do something.
Yes. Let me have some fun, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we kind of, once we got past that and he could see the moves we were making and how much we were saving and how fast we were paying off debt, he came along. But we did end up with the hiccup along the way. And so we had to jump back into debt again and start all over. But that was a process that we did together. And so we went through that and here we are.
Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So again, this was during the time that I was very gung-ho about paying off debt, he deployed twice. And so that was, it took me about 28 months to pay off debt. A year of that, he was deployed. And then there was a couple of weeks in between where they do what they call workups. And they're just out like testing out the ship and things. So he was gone a good majority of the time. So I paid off everything alone. And when he came back, he decided he didn't want his car anymore. And so he gave it to his mom. His mom was in need of a car. And he's like, I'm going to go buy a car. And
oh my goodness.
We had 2 payments left on the last car. And I was just begging, like, let's not buy a car. Let's, try to work our way around this. And he's like, well, you get a car. Because, we were pregnant with our second child at that time.
Okay.
He said, we need something a little bigger. He's like, you buy a car. And if you don't, I'll go and buy a car. And I'll get a car with the bells and whistles. And I was just thinking, let him buy a car or I buy a car. And so I was thinking, if I go do it, I could pick something frugal. Really, I think what I should have did was kind of like try to talk him down and try to put my foot down and maybe even use some tears.
Yeah.
But I gave in. And I was when we bought the car, I was very unmotivated to go back to where I was because I was my head was down the first time.
Yeah.
I was very frugal. I cut back on a lot of things and I just didn't want to go back to that for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So I just kind of, was unmotivated. We paid a little extra here and a little extra there. And just recently, about a year ago, I got serious again, and he jumped in on board this time.
Yeah. So when you say you gave in, y'all ended up with the car with the bells and whistles, or you gave in and got what you would have bought?
I got what I got, but it wasn't. Cars aren't cheap in general,
right?
And I just thought I was gonna find something that I wanted for a lot less, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, his car would have been maybe 10 or 15,000 more, but it wasn't like it was a $10,000 car.
Right.
It was an expensive car. So
Yeah. So going back to when you really had your head down the first time, when you first kind of ripped off this Band-Aid and was like, all right, here we go. This is what we're going to do. What was the approach? Because I know some people are kind of familiar. I think what comes to mind for a lot of people when they hear Dave Ramsey is the envelopes. So did you use the envelopes, and what's the approach? Is it the snowball, kind of like paying, as much as you can towards one thing, or were you also trying to save? Can you kind of give us a peek into what that looked like for your family on kind of a regular basis?
So my first go around, I did not use envelopes. Honestly, I just started using envelopes in January of this year, and
oh my goodness.
Right?
Oh, wow.
My
okay.
goodness, how they change the way you look at money. So first off, I suggest if you do look into Dave Ramsey, definitely go with cash envelopes.
Okay.
But the first time around, when I dug down, I didn't do that, but I was very, I worked at a bank part-time, and I was very, I kept my eye on my budget all the time. It was kind of like obsessive almost. So I knew where every single dollar was going, even if, I used my debit. But his first step is to save $1,000 in your savings. And we had more than that. And we had a couple of CDs, and he suggests, if you do have extra in your savings or extra like in a CD or whatever, cash that out and to jumpstart your debt. And so I did that. And so we went down to $1,000 in our savings. And baby step 2 is pay off your debt. And you start with the snowball. You list them from smallest to largest. Mine were very close in sizes anyway, except for the
student loans. Yeah,
the student loans. It was like 13 here, 20 there, 21, kind of like that. And so you start with the smallest one while paying minimums on all of them, but the smallest one, you throw as much money to it as you can, so you can sell stuff or get a side job, whatever you need to do. So that's the kind of approach we took.
Ooh, I feel like that was probably really scary to cash out those CDs and get down to $1,000.
I think, for me, I don't know. I can't tell you how gung-ho I was.
Yeah, because you were ready.
Yes, I was ready. My husband was in tears almost.
What's happening?
He was like, what are you doing? I was like, Dave says we have to.
So we're following it, and look where it's gotten you. Yeah, that's amazing. Hey friends, popping into this fun episode to remind you to take a quick second to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And don't forget, you can also sign up for bonus episodes and content from my monthly newsletter at melissaduncan.com/join. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to the show. I think, what is hard for people on the outside to wrap their minds around when they're looking in and seeing how successful you've been. I think it's common to say to a family, well, how did you do this on one salary? And that's one of the questions I posted on Instagram, questions for you. And that's one of the questions that I got was, how did you do this on one salary? And I think it is a broad question because you've kind of talked us through that. But was there one part of your spending or your daily life as a one income family that really had to be tweaked in order for this to work? Or was it just a little bit here and a little bit there?
I think for me, and I know this is not everybody's plight, but I'm just thrifty in general. I'm that girl that even if we did make $200K a year, I still wouldn't buy Ralph Lauren, excessively. I don't like my money to go towards frivolous things. I like to travel, and that's where, a majority of my money goes. So I just think it's just being thrifty. But I do tell a lot of people, because a lot of people ask me, how can I become a stay-at-home mom? I'm thinking of doing this, and what can I do to
that's
cut
a good
back?
question too.
I tell them to start living off just their husband's income
Yeah.
while they're still working, to see how it feels, and see if they're ready. Sometimes you're not ready. Sometimes you do have to bulk up your account or, make adjustments. But I don't know. I did a lot of couponing in my day. I've done a little bit of everything. I've done the surveys. I've done.
What does that mean?
Surveys are. I do Swagbucks is one of the sites that I do, but there's a lot of sites you can go on, and you do surveys. They ask you questions, or they ask you to try a product. I know when I had my son, I can't tell you how many sets of diapers I tried. And they pay you, $20 or $30 to try out the product, and you say, yes, I like it, or no, I didn't. You
and you needed diapers anyway, so why not, right?
And whether they were terrible or not, they went on his butt.
Yep.
We do not waste things. But that's another thing, not being wasteful. Just learning to do free things, realizing that there's a lot of metropolitan areas have tons of free events. You just have to find them. You don't have to pay to have a good time. You really don't.
Yeah. And speaking of metropolitan, so one thing we were talking about before we hit record is the fact that you live in San Diego now, and it's a very expensive city. So, was that hard to adjust to when you moved from Memphis to San Diego, and kind of how have you continued your journey in such an expensive city?
Oh my goodness. Well, actually, we moved from, again, because we're a military family.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet I skipped a few. I might have skipped a few cities along the way, but.
Yeah, well, we were in Newport, Rhode Island last. And
okay.
It's expensive there, but not as expensive as it is here. And so it kind of prepped us for when we came out here. But one of the things that we do is during Christmas, we kind of just ask the grandparents to not give gifts, but to give experiences.
Yeah.
And that way we can enjoy it all year long.
Yeah.
But San Diego is so nice and so beautiful, and there's tons of free things you can do. And so there's the beaches, there's hiking. I mean, they have the mountainous areas. There's a lot of free things you can do here. And just adjusting to a type of life where you don't have to do everything that costs $1 wasn't hard for us, because we've been there, and, we just seek out all of the free stuff. And they're usually really fun.
That's awesome.
Bring your snacks along the way.
Yeah, bring your snacks that you coupon to get, right?
Right, exactly.
That's funny. So how old are your kids now?
Oh, I have an 8 and a 4-year-old.
Okay. So what are they learning about personal finance through you? And how much of this are you exposing them to?
Oh my goodness. So the 4-year-old, he's oblivious. I mean, he's just living his best life.
Yeah.
But the 8-year-old, oh my goodness, we exposed her to money probably when she was about 5 or 6.
Okay.
But she loves to travel. She's into traveling. And so after this past Christmas, I told my husband she's going to have to make her own money. And so beyond Christmas and birthdays and things like Easter, she has to pay for everything she wants. So she has to save for it. And she has a chore list. She earns commission. Dave Ramsey also has a set called Financial Peace Junior. And so we got that set for her, and it teaches her to save money. Then she has money that she spends and money that she gives. So she ties, the money that we give her also.
That's awesome.
And so right now her biggest goal is ever since we moved here, she's wanted to go to Hawaii. And I told her, if you want to go to Hawaii, you have
that is no cheap feat to get there.
No, it's not. But I mean, again, I love to travel, so we're obviously going to go anyway. But I told her she had to save $100 for her portion. And so she's
awesome.
like trying to save every tooth that falls out of her mouth. She's like, Mom, I got a tooth. Like every coin she is trying to save for Hawaii.
Good for her. That is awesome. Yeah. Well, and I think my perspective as a former bankruptcy attorney I'm very passionate about what is not given to children in the United States in school as far as personal finance education. I think that's something that is lacking tremendously. Mm-hmm. And I know I didn't have it really, as part of my education growing up. I'm 34 also. And so I'd be curious if that's something that you felt like you had, before you were in debt, in a marriage, as an adult. But I certainly didn't feel like it. And so it's so encouraging to hear that you're teaching your children this. And I'm curious if you kind of came at this with some education about this.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
not a piece. The only thing I knew about finances for sure was you need to keep a good credit score. And so in order to do that, you need to pay your bills on time and not overspend. So we had that packed down. But as far as saving and investing and not having debt, all of that, I knew nothing about.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, unfortunately, that's what's common. And so how great that, you're able to teach and show your kids, this is how, we can live and we can travel and we can do fun things as a family, but it doesn't have to put us into debt, to be able to do it. So that's great. So we've kind of thrown in tips along the way through the conversation, but I want to be sure I haven't skipped anything. Are there any tips that I haven't kind of given you a chance to talk about for moms who are wanting or in the middle of trying to get their family, kind of help get their family out of debt through budgeting?
I would definitely say, to make this super successful, involve everyone. Get everyone involved, even the kids. We color in charts. We have a coin jar that we put all of our extra coins in. The kids love to see that grow.
That's cool.
Read as much as you can. There's a lot of financial educational books out, and it always helps if your partner is willing to join you in reading with you or, sharing that knowledge. I don't know. I think, it's there. One thing I would like to say is because as a stay-at-home mom, I haven't been able to get myself involved in like a retirement account. And there are spousal retirement accounts, spousal Roth IRAs that you can start saving in if you're a spouse. So you don't have to be left out of that either.
Oh, that's good.
So I just think that's important. And get involved. I know a lot of women, when I ask them things, they're like, oh, my husband take care of that. But sometimes you need to be involved as well with the money. You need to be abreast of everything that's going on. So in the event that if something happens, God forbid, you're not lost.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because I hear, I've heard stories of women who they don't even know where the money is or what the money is because, or even vice versa, I've met with the other way around too, like where husbands are like, I have no idea what our financial situation is because my wife handles it all. So no matter who, no matter which way it is, it can't be unbalanced. Everybody has to be in on it. So yeah, that's really important. So tell us, I love your Instagram feed. because it's just beautiful and you do a great job. But tell us about where you've taken that, and because you're sharing tips, you're sharing stories of other families. So talk to us about your Instagram, kind of your mission for that and what you've been doing there, and what you're hoping to do, some maybe goals that you have for continuing to coach women and do this work for other women.
Oh my goodness. I would love to just coach women and families one-on-one. I would love to start a group for girls, young girls, like teaching young girls about their finances early. I just want to teach people, and I want to love on people when it comes to finances, because it's such a hard topic, and I feel like people are kind of scared to talk about it. But
absolutely,
I would love to just let them know that, like, you don't have to be ashamed of any part of your financial journey. Like, just start one and just start, have positive thoughts and keep going. But I don't know. I would just love to reach out to whoever would like to listen to me and like to give advice to. I've had a lot of people message me on the side, and I'm grateful for that. And so if I could continue to, talk to people and get them on the right track, I'm doing what I want to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So remind people where they can find you on Instagram. I said it at the beginning, but where they can find you, and maybe an example of the types of tips that you share. I know that you share some about how much y'all are saving each month. So can you talk about that? Kind of the calendar that you show with what was spent and what was saved?
Oh, yes. So, well, you can find me on Instagram at Her Well Spent Life. One of the things I share monthly, I try to share as much of my budget and my financial journey as possible. But one thing I share is how much I've paid each month and how much I'm saving each month. This is the first month that we're saving because we just became debt-free this month. Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And
that is wonderful.
So yeah, it's just a calendar, and I kind of just show each month every dollar, and I kind of talk you through it or walk you through it, through my feed. I talk about my grocery bill, or I talk about if we're going to Disneyland next week. I just kind of talk about what we're spending there, how we're going to save money, just things that you could do in your everyday life as well.
That's awesome. Well, you have done great work in getting your family out of debt and, into a place where y'all can be able to move forward and think about what, these savings are going to do for the opportunities that this is going to open up for your family going forward is just amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I will link to your Instagram account in the show notes so that everybody can go find you and find out these amazing tips. And I look forward to following your journey and seeing how you can continue to help other women and young girls. And thank you for all the great work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me again.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for tuning in for another inspiring episode of the Influential Motherhood podcast. Be sure to follow my own journey in motherhood and work at Melissa Duncan JD on Instagram, and follow the behind the scenes of the podcast at Influential Motherhood on Instagram and Facebook. If you're enjoying the Influential Motherhood podcast, please take a second to leave a rating or review in iTunes. It is how you can help other moms find the show so they can be inspired by these stories. See you next week.